The Vaedri sent 4 ships to the waypoint. We sent one. That was their first mistake, reading the arithmetic the way they did. I was running sensors from the secondary console aboard the Resolute Arrow, a low-slung patrol gunship out of Meridian Station, 3rd Fleet. Not a dreadnought, not a carrier. The Arrow was 112 meters of matte black composite hull, twin ventral railgun mounts, and an emissions profile so quiet that at 2 kilometers her sister ships sometimes lost her on passive scan. She sat in the waypoint like a shadow among shadows, her running lights dialed to the legal minimum, engines at station keeping idle. She didn't look like much, and that was exactly the point. The Vaedri Compact had been watching humanity for 3 years before they agreed to this meeting. That was their phrase, watching, as if surveillance were courtesy. As if the 17 probe signatures we'd logged in our outer systems were something to thank them for rather than catalog. When their delegate transmission finally came through on the high-band channel, it was translated by their own interpreter and delivered in formal Vaedri hierarchical register, which I'm told was itself a minor diplomatic slight. A speaker of our rank, in their structure, would have been addressed in a lower register. Commander Delacroix told us not to care about that. We didn't. We had other things to track. At the waypoint, their formation was textbook compact spacing. The 4 ships held a convex arc around the approach lane, which meant any vessel coming in from the human side of the boundary would have gun arcs on it from 3 directions before it could fully decelerate. It was a greeting the same way a trap is a greeting. I logged the geometry and pushed the report to the commander's screen without comment. She read it, made a small sound that wasn't quite a sigh, and told me to hold everything passive. We held passive for 90 minutes. Their lead ship was a caste-tier command vessel. The Vaedri don't separate civilian and military authority the way we do. Rank in their fleet corresponds to hereditary caste position, and the closer a ship's commander sits to the apex caste, the more gold paneling appears on the hull exterior. It's literal. The lead ship was plated from stem to stern in something that caught the system's distant star like hammered coin. I had to adjust my display brightness. The vessel was perhaps twice our length, and it moved with the particular patience of something that has never been seriously questioned. The hail came in at minute 92. The Vaedri fleet speaker's name, transliterated, was something like Osidhaver, but the interpreter's rendering came out as High Delegate Osidhaver of the 9th Caste, which in compact terms means roughly the same as a military governor with judicial override authority. He opened by acknowledging that humanity had sent a representative vessel, and then he paused, a pause their culture uses the way we use a raised eyebrow, and said that the compact had expected a delegation of appropriate scale. Commander Delacroix, Keter Mike, the Arrow is our delegation. Another pause, this one longer. Osidhaver said, in a tone I can only describe as gracious condescension, that the compact understood resource limitations varied between civilizations, and that no disrespect was intended. He then stated that as a gesture of good faith, he was detaching one of his escort vessels. The smallest one, he noted, which was still 30 meters longer than us, to accompany the Arrow to the discussion anchorage. To ensure safe passage, he said. That was the word he used. Ensure. I felt the tension on the bridge shift without anyone moving. The commander let the silence run for exactly 3 seconds, which is long enough to mean something in any language. Then she said quietly, "Comms, kill the transponder signal." I did. Our emissions profile, already minimal, dropped to nothing. On their sensors, the Arrow did not simply go dark. She ceased to exist. Not a malfunction signature, not a degraded return. Nothing. 112 meters of warship in open space, gone in a single sweep cycle. I know what their sensor operators must have felt. I'd seen the training simulations. When a vessel that large produces an absence that clean, the first instinct is equipment failure. You run diagnostics. You ping the frequency stack. You look at your neighbor's screen to see if they're getting the same blank. That takes approximately 12 seconds. We gave them 15. Then Commander Delacroix said, "Comms, restore transponder. Helm, move us to position Delta." Position Delta was 200 meters off the port flank of the gold-plated command ship. Not threatening, not quite comfortable, The arrow materialized on their sensors at knife range, running lights back at legal minimum, engines at idle, her railgun mounts in rest position. She had not fired a thruster. She had not produced a detectable approach vector. She had simply reappeared where she chose to reappear, and the only reason the command ship's point defense systems didn't light up is that there was no time between her absence and her presence to form a targeting solution. HFY did not respond for 47 seconds. I watched his ship's sensor records on the intercept feed. They were broadcasting on an unencrypted coordination band, which told me they weren't expecting to need to hide anything. I could see their operators running the same diagnostic cycle twice. I could see the formation shift fractionally, the 3 escort ships rotating their gun arcs inward in a response that was automatic, involuntary, the same thing any crew does when something appears where it shouldn't. They weren't aiming at us. They were reacting to us. There's a difference, and it matters. When the High Delegate finally spoke, the formal register was still there, but it had changed in texture. A Vaedri speaker of his caste is trained from youth to modulate nothing. The voice is a projection of caste position, and caste position is immutable. Therefore, the voice does not waver. His didn't waver. But something in the subharmonics of the translation feed, something in the interval between syllables, had slowed. I'd been told that in Vaedri physiological terms, a slowed syllabic interval is the equivalent of a sharp intake of breath. He said, "The compact is prepared to discuss terms at the anchorage." Delacroix said, "Good. We'll follow you in." She said it the same way she would say anything, level, grounded, no edge in it. That was the thing about her. She didn't need the edge. The fact of what had just happened was its own edge. A ship the compact had assessed as a token gesture, a polite minimum, had walked through their sensor net without a ripple and materialized in command captain's personal space without a shot fired or a threat issued. We hadn't said we were dangerous. We had simply been what we were and let them do the arithmetic. The escort they detached to shepherd us never moved to take station on our flank. It held its position in the arc formation and said nothing. I logged that too. At the anchorage, the talks lasted 6 hours. I wasn't in the room. I stayed at sensors while Lieutenant Commander Vasic led the delegation aboard their station. What I know of the negotiations is what Vasic put in his debrief. HFY had opened with a different register. Midcast, the address level you'd use for a power of equivalent standing, not a subordinate. Vasic said it happened between the hail and the handshake, and that nobody on his team acknowledged it, because in that culture acknowledging a shift in register is a kind of demand, and we weren't there to demand anything. We came out of it with a cold peace framework, monitoring protocols, boundary definitions, a signals convention for unscheduled contact. No alliance, no trade terms, no friendship. But no war, and more than that, no assumption on their part that humanity was something they had already measured and found manageable. They had come to this waypoint believing the arithmetic, for ships to 1, twice the length, 3 gun arcs. They left it having run a different calculation entirely, one they hadn't been expecting to run. The arrow undocked from the anchorage at 0340 ship time. I was still at sensors. The Vaedri formation held position as we cleared the boundary, and I watched their scan returns until they were down to blips at the edge of range. HFY's command ship rotated to track us for 4 minutes after we'd crossed back into human space. Then it stopped. I noted in the log. No comment, just the fact of it. Commander Delacroix stood down the bridge crew in groups and then sat in her chair for a long time after the last of them had gone. I was running end-of-shift calibrations when she said, without looking up from the deck plating, "They'll talk about today." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She didn't say what she thought they'd say. Neither did I. There wasn't much need. The arrow had answer for us.